Rich Little.
Our guest today is a show business legend. As a master mimic of over 200 voices, he's performed for presidents on television and movies all over the country. I've seen him live in person, and I hope you have too. And as someone who not only does radio, but is also a voice actor, this man has had an enormous impact on my life. Mr. Rich Little, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Am I still alive?
Yeah. Your book, Little by Little, that makes sense, sure. People I've Known and Been, which is one of the best titles I think I've heard in quite some time. Why now? Why at this point in your career did you feel the urge to write your memoirs?
Well, I've kept a diary down through the years of things that happened, funny things, and I thought to myself, this would make an interesting book, because I wasn't prepared to do a biography of me or a tell-all book.
Right.
That wouldn't be me. But I thought if it was funny, people would be interested in it, because a lot of these people, these icons that I worked with and got to know, most of them are gone now, unfortunately, but a lot of funny things happen, because when you do impressions, it lends itself to humor. And one of the great thrills of my career was, working with my idols.
What interests me about your career is doing the impressions is one thing, but you've got to come up with funny material using those impressions. True.
Very true. At the beginning, I didn't think I was going to have to be a comedian. I was just going to be an impersonator. But, it's what you say, and that's got to be funny. So I realized very early in my career that I had to come up with material, which is always tough. But I was very fortunate to have the best writers on the Dean Martin roasts, and, I was even written material for The Tonight Show, too. So most of the shows that I've done over the years, they've had writers, and then I would put in my own, 2 cents worth, and we'd go from there.
Our guest today is Rich Little. His new book is called Little by Little, People I've Known and Been. Another thing that interests me about your performances, obviously there are some voices that you do, and these celebrities might fade over time, but there are occasional new ones who pop up, and I know you do newer celebrities too, like Dr. Phil, for example.
Yeah, I do some people that are living, Clint Eastwood and Jack Nicholson. My show, I'm working at the Tropicana here in Las Vegas. I've been there over a year, and might be time I went home. But anyway, it's great because I'm playing to people that remember the era that I was involved in. I mean, young people have a tough time. They don't know who Dean Martin is. They don't know who Frank Sinatra is, or John Wayne, or Jimmy Stewart. So I appeal to a certain group of people that remember these people, It's funny, I had a 15-year-old kid in the show the other night sitting in the front, killing himself, laughing, and I kept thinking to myself, he doesn't know anybody I'm doing. And when the show was over, he came up to me and said, Mr. Little, I really enjoyed your show. You're very funny. And I said, well, I'm shocked and delighted. He said, however, I am surprised. I have a question. I said, what is it? He said, I was just wondering why you kept changing your voice all the time. But some young people are into the past, not many. Most young people today, that's their phones and their iPads, and they're not really interested in the past. When I was a kid, I was very interested in the past. But, today kids are sort of into their own thing. So it becomes a little tougher, but luckily the age group that I appeal to still remember all these greats. And, it's a time that's passed us by, really. I mean, we'll never have people like Jack Benny and George Burns and Milton Berle and Bob Hope. Those people, we'll never have them again,
It's interesting because when you look back at the entertainers of the past, so many of them were larger-than-life characters.
Yeah.
And they lent themselves to impressions.
Oh, yeah. They were all larger than life. Clark Gable and Humphrey Bogart, John Wayne. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to do actors of today. You know, how do you do Brad Pitt?
Right.
You know, I'd rather do Angelina Jolie, to tell you the truth. I'd never be lonely, I'll tell you that, but end up jumping myself. But, you know, it's tough to do Matt Damon and, you know, how do you do Ben Affleck? I mean, you know, it's tougher than it was.
Well, when I was doing voiceovers for a show called Celebrity Deathmatch, where we did celebrity impersonations, they would assign actors, and, you know, they would give me somebody like Tim Robbins, fine actor,
Right.
but I would say,
Yeah.
how the heck am I going to impersonate him? It just sounds like everybody, you know, no disrespect,
Yeah.
but nothing stands out. But you not only did these wonderful impressions, but you befriended a lot of these celebrities, and I'd like to ask you about a couple of them.
Sure.
Beginning with President Reagan.
Well, you know, when I first met Reagan, that was the key to doing him. Well,
Right.
you know, he always started everything off with, well. And the other thing he did was he always looked down before he spoke, and then he raised his head and then spoke. And I asked him when I first met him, I said, Mr. President, why do you look down and then you look up and talk? And he said to me, well, Rich, you'd look down too if you owned a horse ranch. I thought that was pretty good. You know, he was pretty sharp. He really was. He had a great sense of humor, and he saw the humor in most things. I had a lot of fun with him. You know, he even did impressions for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Reagan one time at the White House, after some function, he started to do his Jimmy Stewart for me, and I kept thinking, well, that's not bad, not great. Don't give up your day job, but you know. And then he did John Wayne, and then he did Truman Capote for me. The President of the United States did Truman Capote for him. I'll never forget this. This was a whole bunch of people were standing around wondering why the heck he was rubbing his eye and going into his Truman Capote impression, you know. That was funny. And I gave him a line, too, and he wrote it down on the back of a Secret Service man's back. I said to him, I got a joke for you if you want to do Truman. And he said, what is it? I said, well, you know, a lot of people think that I wrote in cold blood, but that's not true. Actually, I wrote in ink. And Reagan thought that was hysterical and wrote that out on the back of a Secret Service man, put it in his pocket, and then he said to me, you know, I'm going to try that out on Gorbachev. He will love that. And I thought to myself after, can you imagine the President of the United States doing Truman Capote for Gorbachev? I would have loved to have seen that.
Sure.
He was great. You know, he and Jimmy Stewart, and you know, were probably my two closest friends of all the people that I've worked with.
Well, there's a great clip from the Dean Martin roast where you're on the dais with Jimmy Stewart, and you're teaching him how to do Jimmy Stewart. Yeah.
Yeah, I got very lucky with that because we never rehearsed that. He didn't know where I was going with that.
Right.
And that could have been a problem, but Jimmy was very sharp, and he picked up what I was doing. I was going to show him how to do himself, and he was going to do it badly, and then he ends up saying, not very good, is it? I said, no, that's awful. That's the worst Jimmy Stewart I've ever heard. And it was a great moment. It was just a terrific moment. Jimmy said, you know, I talk so slow, Rich. One time they were halfway through making a movie, and I found out they'd already finished the sequel. But he could kid himself.
Yeah.
I loved Jimmy Stewart. I really did. I adored that man.
I know with a lot of your impressions, unlike today, a lot of comedians seem to be mean-spirited, but there was really nothing mean-spirited in your comedy.
Well, you know, it's a different thing today. I mean, some of these roasts you're doing today are pretty,
Yeah.
wow. The language is incredible, and they say anything they want, and I don't think they're that funny, really. I mean, if you look back on those old Dean Martin roasts, they're pretty funny, and even funny today.
Yep.
I have young people who say to me, I watch all the roasts, and I've seen them all, and the family watches them all the time. So that's a great compliment, you know.
Sure, and you just can't beat all that talent on one stage.
No, they were the best of the best on the stage, best comedians and best actors of all time. That's what made it terrifying when you did that, because it wasn't just the audience. You know, you're performing for hundreds of thousands of people, but it was the people sitting on the dais that really got to you. You had to really concentrate and not let that bother you.
I remember hearing you once say that you found Johnny Carson a difficult impression to do, and of course you later mastered it, and he loved that impression.
Johnny Carson. You know, sometimes I become Johnny Carson. I really get into the impression of Johnny Carson, and I convince myself that I am Johnny Carson. And then when the show is over, I find myself going to the dressing room and writing out an alimony check. I once told that to Johnny Carson. He said, Rich, you know, at every one of my weddings, they threw minute rice. Mine too.
I said in the intro that you can do 200 voices. In your current show, you don't do all 200 of them, do you?
Oh, no. I can, if I was put to the test, do around 200. A lot of character actors and a lot of people that wouldn't be very commercial. But in my show that I'm doing at the Trop, I probably do about 50 impressions, you know, a night.
Now, the show is it Little by Little? Is it based on the book? Or?
It's the show is actually they called it Rich Little Live at the Tropicana.
Mm-hmm.
That's the name of the show, which is a lot better than the old show, Rich Little Deceased at the Tropicana. That show died, I'll tell you that. But I'm actually doing, if you come to Vegas and see my show at the Laugh Factory, you will see me doing sort of a mini history of my career. And I show a lot of clips from a lot of shows with the real person I'm imitating. And then a lot of my artwork is in the show, too, because I sketch, you know.
Right.
And I've done hundreds of portraits over the years, and I show a lot of those, too.
So this book, Little by Little, People I've Known and Been, is available now. And where, I guess Amazon.com maybe is the best place
Amazon.com. I hope they'll put it in the bookstore soon. If they don't, I'll come down and put it in myself. But you can get it at Amazon.com. And I think people will find it interesting because it's mostly humorous things that have happened with Orson Welles and Bing Crosby, and I talk about, oh my gosh, Glenn Ford and all kinds of actors that I've worked with, and comedians too, you know, Don Rickles.
Sure.
You know?
You're one of the few people I've seen break up Don Rickles with your impersonation of him.
Don Rickles. Rich, why don't you put your teeth in backwards and bite yourself to death? You're a pain in the ass. Anyway, gang, I kid you, Reg. I kid you. You're going to the home. You don't know who you are. I love Don. Isn't Don amazing at age 90? He's incredible. So is Tony Bennett. That's the guy that really knocks me out.
Well, age is just a number. You know, if you've got it, you've got it.
Well, yeah, you're only as old as the girls you feel, right?
Well, I want to thank you again for spending some time with us. Once again, the book is Little by Little, People I've Known and Been. The great Rich Little, thank you so much, sir. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay, you too.